Welcome back to the Let's Build a Willys Jeep channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to install the emergency brake cable linkage that will actually be attached to the cane on the dashboard. And there'll be a cable that runs down this way past the transfer case, and then it'll connect to the emergency brake on the transfer case. Here is the emergency brake cane on the dashboard. So when you pull this cane, it will actually pull the cable and it will engage the emergency brake on the transfer case. And the cable will pull on this lever right here, which actually pushes the springs outwards, and the shoes press on the brake drum, and that's what creates the emergency brake effect. And now I will get to the cable installation. There are a few components to this installation. There are these two small brackets that will hold on the emergency brake cable. And these brackets are actually a little bit different. As you can see, they have an indent, and the indents are on opposite sides of each other. This bracket will be installed on the Firewall, while this bracket will be installed on the transmission and transfer case cross member. And this right here is the Firewall bracket that will hold up the brake cable, and then this clamp will be attached to this bracket right here, and the cable will run through this into the cane, and then it'll go down into the emergency brake lever. Now we are going to install the emergency brake bracket that will hold up the emergency brake cable, and the cable will run through this hole and then down into the transfer case where the emergency brake actually is. And it's important that we have the bracket orientated in the correct position. So you want to make sure that these two holes right here where the cable bracket will connect are facing upwards, and then these two holes will feed through these two holes in the Firewall. And we'll just use a 1/4 inch by 3/4 long coarse thread, and these will just feed through like this and then into these holes. Those bolts might be kind of hard to line up because it actually feeds through the emergency brake cane bracket on the dashboard here. So you have to line up the holes through the Firewall and then through this bracket, and then just put a lock washer and a nut on and just hand tight these bolts. With both the lock washers and nuts on, the installation of the bracket is complete. Next is time to install the emergency brake cable, and it's important that we get the cable in the right orientation or direction, and we get the correct bracket or clamp onto the cable to secure it in its right location. So you want to make sure the cable with this big long tube is facing upwards and going through the Firewall and attaching to the emergency brake cane. First, we have to stick this tube into the Firewall and into this rubber garment. So I put some grease on this right here so it slides in easier. Just like that. Here's what it looks like from underneath. So here we have the emergency brake cable right there, and then we have to attach it to that cane up there, and it'll just be held on with a cotter pin through that hole on the emergency brake cable. And there's a hole on the cane, as you can see right there, and that will secure those two together. And I'll stick a cotter pin through that hole right there, and that will hold the cable onto the cane. With a cotter pin slipped through everything on the top here is finalized with the emergency brake cable kind of in its position and through the firewall. Now you install this clamp and use the clamp with the indents facing downwards and put the clamp in the inside of this bracket right here. And you might have to stretch open this clamp, as it's a pretty tight fit, and then use some big adjustable clamps to close up this bracket and then thread the bolt through the clamp and through the bracket. This might be a little bit tricky to do, but it is doable. Now I would feed the cable through right in there, so it'll go on top of the transmission transfer case cross member, and that will hold up the cable for now. Just like that, and the cable's kind of going in the right direction now. And now we'll get the bottom clamp installed onto the emergency brake cable. I am now underneath the Jeep, and the emergency brake cable is fed through this small opening right here, which is located between the transmission and transfer case. And this clamp will hold on the cable at the bottom here. We have to build out this cross member a little bit so we can put the clamp approximately about, as you can see, about out here. Because if you put the clamp actually on the cross member way back in here, it actually pulls too much on the cable, and this yoke doesn't go out further enough, so the cable and the emergency brake won't actually work. So we have to make a little bit of a modification, use like an L bracket, and that will hold on the cable down here, and the e-brake will actually work. Here is the bracket that I have created. So I just used the holes that were already drilled in the cross member. I would suggest not drill it anymore. Just use what you got and make the bracket as big as you need to so it goes through any of these holes. I just used this hole and this hole. As you can see, these holes are actually different levels. So I had to customize the bracket so it's flat and the holes are actually off. And the bracket looks like this. It's just a piece of angle iron, and I don't know, it's probably a 1/4 inch thick and nice and solid. And these two holes will actually be placed onto a cross member here, and it'll be something like this. And then the emergency brake clamp here will be attached to the top. So you can see I got two holes here. So I got the hole for the bolt and the hole for this little tab or spike on the end of the clamp, as you can see. And that little spike is so the clamp doesn't twist on you, and it always stays straight. As you can see, this is how the bracket is positioned when it's actually mounted to the cross member here, and just tighten these bolts until they are hand tight and snug, and that should be good. Now I can line up this clamp, and so it fits through those two holes that hold on the clamp. Fast forward here with some YouTube magic, and all the bolts are tightened, and the clamp bolt is installed with a lock washer and a nut, and it is fed through the hole for the bolt and the hole for the little pin on these clamps. And it's important we have the right clamp here, the clamp that has the little indents, and they'll be facing towards you guys. And this cable can now be attached to the emergency brake assembly here with this clevis pin. I'll give you guys a quick little tip here. So with this bracket, have this bracket a little bit above the cross member here, about like, I don't know, 1/2 inch. And that is so the actual cable is actually in line now with this lever, and there's less bends in this cable. As you know, everything is so mechanical. The less bends there are, the less binding will happen, and the easier this cable will be to pull, and that'll make the emergency brake just work better. And that's how you install this cable. I'm gonna show you guys how the e-brake now works. See, the e-brake is fully disconnected right now. So the cane is pushed in and I'm going underneath and see what's up. When the emergency brake cable is not engaged, see the brake drum spins freely. And now when you pull on the cable, it will pull on this lever and this will put pressure onto the brake drum and that will stop the back wheels from spinning. And that's how emergency brake works. Pulling the cane. The lever is now fully engaged on the emergency brake. And now the drum doesn't spin. See, now you know the emergency brake does work. That is how you install the emergency brake cable. And next video, part 2 of this brake cable, I'll show you how to connect the emergency brake return spring and linkage onto the frame. And thanks for watching Let's Build a Willys Jeep, and make sure to subscribe.